with all the individuals who are doing extraordinary work and making a difference in the life of the communities of Northeast. Today we have Rita Banerjee. She is founding director of Green Hub project. She's a wildlife environmental filmmaker and educator. She uses videos and photography for conservation. And today, this is what we are going to hear from Rita. She has been a recipient of many, many national and international awards. And the kind of humbleness that she represents in her talks and what inspires her to this kind of work, we'll directly hear from her. So Rita, most welcome to the Anaajoree platform, and we'll look to hear your exciting journey and learn from it. Rita, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Anaajoree team, and thank you, Sanjay, for inviting me on this platform. Really happy to be here.
So we'd like to hear your story, the growth that we have, the organic growth that you as a person and the Green Hub, and then we will open the platform for viewers and audiences to ask you questions directly, which also includes me, by the way.
Well, like what you said, Sanjay, my background is environment and wildlife films, and I think I've done that for more than 20 years, maybe 25 years. And, you know, I mean, if I have to start from the beginning, it started with a simple Agfa camera. You know, those days I was still in college, and my father gave me one of those old Agfa cameras, which used to shoot black and white. Shoot black and white, meaning that time there was only black and white films which we could afford. And I think I got the first roll. It was just 16 exposures in that roll. And because photography was so expensive at that time, that to expose that 16 you know, photographs, I think I took a month, because every photograph was so precious. And you know, I gave it for developing in a studio. There was a studio near a college in Kashmiri Gate in Delhi, and we had to go and pick up the contact sheet and the pictures next week. And when I saw the first roll, you know, you didn't even know whether any photograph would come out, because that's the first time you were playing around with the aperture, shutter speed, and that whole excitement of seeing your first images. You know, I think that was the biggest hook. You know, you couldn't believe that you had actually created something. And it's very difficult to describe it now, because now when you take pictures, it's instant. You can take a picture, you can delete it, you know, you can redo the exposures. But at that time, you didn't even know what you were getting was actually going to come or not. So I think that itself was a big hook. And very few people in my college were doing, I think nobody was doing photography at that time. So that was, like, you can say, the beginning, because I just started loving the camera. You know, I would walk around, sometimes spend 2 months exposing one roll. And it used to be $8 a print, I think, at that time. So, you know, everything, you walk down the corridors of the college and everything became an image. Whether it was the bars of the hostel window, whether it was the light coming out of at night through the windows, you're always wondering, how can I capture this? Can I use a long exposure? Can I use aperture to blur the background? You know, everything had to be calculated. But at that time also, one didn't know whether I mean, I didn't know whether that was going to be a career or that was going to be the foundation of what I was going to do. But that's how it all began, with one small Agfa camera. And then we were fortunate of two of us joined a studio in Delhi, Riverbank Studios, which was into environment films. And initially it was just the camera, which I was thinking that, okay, I'll become a camera person. I love the camera. I love going outdoors. And soon it became about other things, like even editing at that time was these big machines and big tapes. And, you know, that time it was videotapes, and the first professional video was coming in. You had something called the high band cameras and the low band cameras, and the tapes used to be as big as a book. And I loved machines. I just loved machines. So from camera, it moved on to editing, and soon it was, I think soon it became beyond all that, when we started traveling across India for all the films, that time we used to travel a lot on the road because that was the most feasible way to do environment films and wildlife films. And that's when I think one started understanding what India was all about. You know, at one level, you saw these beautiful landscapes, whether it was the drylands of India, whether it was the coastal areas, whether it was the forest areas. I mean, India is just a beautiful, beautiful country if you look at the landscape. You also saw a lot of fascinating wildlife, you know, from tigers to turtles to, I mean, it's just, when you go into a jungle, it's just beautiful. It's so diverse. At the same time, you also saw that India is not about wildlife in isolation or environment in isolation. There's always a very close connection between people and nature. You know, that's always been there. So none of our stories were about nature or environment without people. It was always about people and nature. Sometimes there were beautiful stories where you had incredible people working against all odds to save a species. Sometimes it was about a group of people who were fighting to increase the water table in a village. Sometimes it was about cooperatives getting together to increase the livelihood of women. At the same time, there were very, very difficult stories also where you saw a lot of poverty, a lot of distress, a lot of destruction of environment. You know, I mean, areas where forests had just been cleared out, uh, places where you saw plastic everywhere. So you saw like all sides of India, and it was like the video or the filmmaking became like your teacher. You know, one started understanding India through that, and one started understanding how important it is to tell these stories, you know. And it wasn't just about the films. It just wasn't about the films. It was also about the video documentation which we are doing. Because it was many times, it was stories which might disappear after 10 years. You know, like we once filmed the honey hunters in Western Ghats. There's this fascinating, you know, I mean, they hang down these beautiful cliffs just with these forest vines. They make a ladder out of forest vines and they're hanging down these long cliffs just to harvest the rock bee honey. And it's all full of knowledge, traditional knowledge about what wine to use, how to hang, and they don't have anything for protection except for a cloth. So you saw a lot of traditional knowledge also, and the younger generation moving into tea gardens at this labor, and one realized so many things will just disappear over time. So it was also not just the films, but the video documentation, which we felt like, you know, you make a 25-minute film, but rest of the footage can become a very valuable asset for education, for people working on the ground, for students, for college students, for that community itself to say that this is what we are about, you know. At the same time, I think one also started realizing that there was no set platform for youth to get into conservation. Somebody like me, I joined the studio, I worked there for 10 years, had a great opportunity. I was able to work there for a long time and learn and move ahead. But what about so many youth who may want to get into conservation films or conservation itself, but do not have a set platform? How do you create a platform like that? So I think these are the thoughts which kept growing in my head over time. The more and more I became a filmmaker and more I, you know, and I think in 2010, 2003, I finally started my own production house called Dusty Foot Productions. And through that also, I continued doing that work. And at one point, one of our first films was in fact in the Northeast, in very close to where I am right now. I'm in Tezpur now. And just 2 hours from here is the Pake Wildlife Sanctuary. And one of the first projects which we started doing independently under Dusty Foot was the rehabilitation of Himalayan black bears into the wild. And for that, we started visiting the Northeast. And in that process, over the next 5 years, we started filming the hunting of, we were like, our curiosity was, why are there these orphan bear cubs? And obviously it's linked to hunting. So that led us to, we had heard of the wild meat markets in the Northeast. And so we said, let's explore it, not from the point of view of so much as ki hunting shouldn't happen, but from the point of view of really understanding, does this kind of hunting actually have an impact on the overall wildlife population or on the ecosystem? And was there an ethic behind traditional hunting versus poaching? So I think that film took us about 5 years simultaneously, and we came out with a film called The Wild Meat Trail. And I think that was kind of a turning point because it kind of captured what was happening with wildlife around the Northeast, where many forests had become silent. Many communities, when they needed something, many of the rituals need wildlife products. Like sometimes it's maybe a macaque, it may be a gallbladder of something, it may be anything to do with wildlife. And soon you realize many communities had to go much deeper to get any kind of wildlife. Or, from a point where it was something which a few hunters did. Now it was a lot of people going hunting because it had a commercial entity in the cities. In the towns, now you had people who had moved into towns and wanted wild meat. How do you get wild meat in a town? So you had to call out to the village, and from the village, the wild meat traveled to the towns, and that's how the wild meat markets came up. And as soon as you attach a commercial entity to a product, the balance starts becoming different, and that's what the film captured. But it also captured the kind of knowledge the community has about the forest. And we realized that the film is great. Film is great for documentation, but it's very important to work directly with the community if one had to talk about conservation, even to deepen our understanding. We couldn't come and say, hey, stop hunting. It was about deepening our understanding and then moving ahead to see whether we could make any difference. And that's how you can say the birth of Green Hub took place. I collaborated with another fantastic organization called Northeast Network, which is headed by Dr. Monisha Behel. She's popularly known as Ben, and she's a very, very close friend of mine. And she had already worked with women across the Northeast. And it seemed like a perfect collaboration because I wanted to work with youth. I wanted to work with video. She was already working on the ground with women. And we kind of came together and we started the Green Hub project, which was now 5 years back. And the whole idea was my strength was video, and my strength was video and films and learning through that. So I was like, can we use that knowledge, or can we use this learning to actually involve youth in conservation? So we started a fellowship. Green Hub project is a fellowship where we take, and it's only for the Northeast right now. It's for youth. It's like 20 youth get selected every year across the Northeast states, all the 8 states. It's through an application process. The target youth are youth from remote areas, from marginalized communities, from areas or from families who cannot afford this kind of training, but are somewhere committed to conservation or want to use video for social change, for conservation, or want to use it to learn about conservation, And that's how this whole project started. When 20 youth get selected, they are with us for 1 year. It's a residential fellowship. And the training involves first learning the technicalities of it from camera, photography, editing, storytelling. But it's also a lot of lectures and lectures by conservationists, by practitioners in the field. So while you're making these films, your understanding also deepens. And we partner with several organizations across the Northeast, from smaller organizations to bigger organizations. And many of them are not conservation organizations. For example, one of our partners is Ayang School in Majuli. We partnered with Child Aid Network, which works with education. So it's multiple organizations working with us, where the fellows go make these films, come back to Tezpur, where we edit it into short clips. And a lot of learning is through this field experience. So for example, if one has to understand human-animal conflict, for a video, you actually have to go into the field to shoot it. So you don't just see the conflict, but you also see the interaction of the people, the forest department, the animal, the landscape. And it's like a holistic learning about what is happening. So now it's been 5 years. We have a fantastic alumni of 88 fellows representing all the 8 states. And many of them are working directly with the community now, on conservation action, on restoration, forming youth collectives in conservation. Some of them are working with different conservation NGOs. Some of them are coming together to create campaigns and putting the focus on many of the environmental issues in the region. So yes, and so that's what I do, and that's what Green Hub is all about. And the hope is that this body of youth or this network of youth will become a stronger, network of positive thinkers, of change makers who will help to build the region back. Yes.
Thanks, Rita. That's quite inspiring to see that somebody's passion can take you so far. A lot of people have personal hobbies which ends up gardening and doing little bit here, but this seems that you have taken the entire world with you, working with videos and photography. Tell us about one or two photos or one or two videos, and I'm asking this question precisely because there have been videos of garbage that has moved me so much that I literally joined the movement that was going against plastic, against mercury. Tell us that which videos or photographs that we can get inspired to, you got inspired to, and decided this is a means to change the world.
I think a lot of it, Sanjay, was from our own experience, because when I was in Riverbanks, we made quite a few films which won a lot of awards. But one of the films we did was called Shores of Silence. This was on the slaughter of whale sharks in the coast of Gujarat. Whale shark is the largest fish in the ocean. A medium-sized whale shark is about 30 feet. One of the largest whale shark which was found on the Indian coast, according to some reports, was 60 feet. And this beautiful fish, which is like, it's called a whale shark because it's got a whale-like mouth. And this used to be slaughtered or killed for its liver. And the liver used to be used for waterproofing boats. And the rest of the carcass used to be thrown on the shore because you can't eat it's all white blubber. So nobody in India used to eat it. Till one exporter started buying that body of the whale shark for selling abroad as tofu meat. And so the killing of whale sharks started increasing. The locals used to get 1 rupee or 2 rupee a kilo, and it's a huge fish. So that's a lot of money. And being a big fish, if you kill too many of them, soon it's going to disappear because the reproductive cycle of a bigger animal is much slower. So the film, while I was in Riverbanks with Mike and Shibani, my colleagues, Mike was the director of Riverbanks, and we made this film over 4 years. And this film highlighted what was happening to the whale shark, and it helped in actually changing the law. In the next 2 years, the whale shark was put in the Wildlife Protection Act. Now it's a protected species in India. And it's been one of the most successful campaigns. Nobody kills whale sharks on that coast now. And so when I've seen the impact of films, there are some other films also in recent times. Friends of mine, Ramki, Bano Haralu, and Sashank, they did a film on the Amur falcons in Northeast. In fact, it's a Northeast story. It's one of the most landmark conservation stories of the Northeast. So Amur falcons travel all the way from Mongolia. They cut through Northeast. They enter through Nagaland, cut through Northeast, fly across India, and go to South Africa during their migration. And on the way, they stop in Nagaland, and they used to be hunted in hundreds every day, thousands, in fact. And these friends of mine, they shot a clip of it, the killing of the Amur falcons. And I think that generated a whole online campaign. And today, Amur falcon is also, it's banned, hunting is banned there. And it's been one of the most successful campaigns in the Northeast, in fact. Everybody in the Northeast should know about it. Yeah.
How do you measure these impacts? Because these are very, very interesting stories that can really move people into action. They can make them activists. How do you measure an impact when you say that because of this film, because of this photography, we know about the Bhopal tragedy, how it moved the policy, in fact. So how do we measure the impact of what you have done? How does it comes across a large number of youth, volunteers, policymakers?
So Sanjay, it's a very interesting question. It's actually case to case. Some films which are very direct and are highlighting an issue, like the whale shark film, it was a very clear cut film about what was happening to the whale shark, and it was also very clear that it wasn't the main livelihood of the people, and it was also clear that if it continued, the whale shark would disappear. That it wasn't something which was a core livelihood of the people, and the whale shark as a species disappearing, any species disappearing can impact the ecosystem in ways which we don't even know. Any species disappearing, we have no idea where the ripple effect is. you know so the whale shark disappearing would have been a huge thing, and this particular film, because it was a straightforward thing, it showed the killing, it was easy to take it forward by different groups. It's a film alone cannot be the change maker, it's more like a catalyst. But here the film became an important catalyst for the groups, different groups, to take it forward, because there was visual evidence of what was happening. Similarly, in Amur Falcon, it's not just the film or the clip. Those become the starting point, you can say. Those become the triggers, the catalyst. And that itself is important for any movement, you know? So when you measure impact, it's really case to case. In the case of Wild Meat Trail, you cannot measure impact because it's not as if hunting has stopped. It's more that it helped us to deepen our understanding. It helped us to start something like Green Hub. So it's not always about measuring impact, but about whatever little bit each one of us can do. And I think the impact can only be measured through the different collaborations and the people who come together to work together. That's the only thing you can say. And so with films, it's like that. Yeah.
That's really an answer that I would like to probably repeat in other of my conversations with authors. That impact is something that you measure case by case and not generalize it. Thank you. That's a brilliant answer. In Northeast, we generally say, let's take example of Tinsukia. As child, we saw thousands of sparrows. We saw thousands of crows sitting on our house. They have more or less disappeared for whatever reason. But I don't see that it has made a difference in the life of the people. A lot of people just don't care, just because they probably don't know. How do like the whale shark, then we were in a way able to save it? How do we bring back these species? I mean, they are not completely dead, they are not extinct, but we don't see the numbers. Maybe seeing a sparrow a day still is not common in my house today. So how do they disappear, and how do we bring back? What, as community, as individuals, as people, we need to do to make sure that we are able to recreate, rejuvenate, conserve these species?
I think it's very important. Like you say, actually, you said a very interesting thing. When you start looking at the environment as one species, like a sparrow or a whale shark, or you said the crows, it becomes very limited. Environment is actually all of us. It's you are not a part of environment. Humans are also part of environment, and each one of us is linked in a way. The water we are drinking, the food we are eating, everything is environment. So one has to look at, if, for example, insects. Okay, we ignore insects, right? Now, if the insects disappear, it's a known fact now. There's scientific papers around it that if the bees disappear, 90% of what we eat gets pollinated by bees. Our insects are. It's like somebody said that it's not that insects need us. We need the insects to survive, because if there are no animals, if there are no insects, we won't have the food which we are eating today. So one has to start understanding environment in a deeper way, not just for the heck of it, not just saying that, oh, what's the use of saving a tiger? What's the use of saving a whale shark? When you look at nature, each of us are connected. You have to remove that isolation. Like you just started the whole conversation that we all work in silos. But as soon as you start seeing things in silos, when you don't see a connection between garbage and a tiger, you've lost it. You know, the reason we have waste today is because the forests have gone, because the urban lifestyle is taking over. Urban lifestyle is making us use packaging. Packaging is making us throw it away. So everything is linked. When we were growing up, there was no plastic. You know, the vegetable used to come in a thela outside my house. We used to buy it. We had a basket. My mother used to buy the vegetable. There was no plastic, right? Milk, it was a ceremony. In the evening, my neighbors, the uncles used to go every day to a village nearby, stand in line, collect the milk. It was a community thing. You collected the milk, you came back, you had it in a can, right? So now, where we are changing the definition of development, we see development as something where packaged thing is development, skyscrapers are development, dams are development. But you're forgetting the fact that it's not sustainable. And the COVID situation has shown us that. Why are we in this situation today? COVID-19 is directly linked. This pandemic is linked to the fact that natural systems are disappearing. So it's as simple as that. You know, for our survival, we need everything.
How do we make this message across that we don't work in silos, the world doesn't exist in silos, and that everything is interlinked and so closely interlinked that removing just even one piece of that might just destroy the entire whole? Working with the youth, you stated that you have been working with the youth. What has been your experience working with the youth? You have 88 fellows now, alumni. What do they do? How are they making the change? Can you enlighten us a little bit on that? Because that would be the interesting story to share with the different groups. We have youths who do different parts in different sectors. So that we would like to definitely hear about.
No, I'm actually, thanks for asking me that, because in the middle of everything, the real hope are the youth, you know, and my experience with the fellows who have passed through Green Hub, who now I know very closely, actually they keep you really optimistic despite everything which is happening. You can see how their mind works. It's like, you know, given the opportunity, they all start understanding what conservation really means. And many of them have chosen to go back and work with the community by their own choice. They can leave the Northeast, they can go and work in cities now. They can get jobs in the cities. It's not as if they can't get jobs in the cities, but they actually want to work with the community. Many of them are coming together to really amplify the voices on conservation issues, trying to make people understand what conservation is all about. And I think that is really the hope. You know, the youth today, like the way they are using social media, the way they're using their own, I mean, going from ground to ground, talking to communities, there's a certain pride in their own indigenous communities, you know. So I think it's very important. One of the key gaps I feel is, like, taking from your question, is how our education system kind of delinks people from their own roots. You know, the education system does not help you to understand your own land or the value of what is the actual meaning of sustainability. So if we can, through our own efforts, whether you are working with waste management, whether I'm working with conservation, whether somebody is working with music or art, if we can bridge this gap through our own efforts, bridge this gap where you start understanding the value of your past, start understanding the value of traditional knowledge, understanding how you can link the past to the future, how you can make it contribute towards that. I think that's where the youth have to play a role, and all of us have to play a role in that, you know.
do they remain motivated after they graduate, or are there pressures? I know in urban areas now there is a certain amount of freedom for the youth to take up voluntary work, to take up the passion that they are very keen to do something. Does it stay for long? Does it sustain over a period of time? Because then there are different kind of hindrances that pressures start coming up. How do we keep them motivated? How do they continue to do what they really want to do?
Yeah.
I
I think
remember one of the good stories in the Three Idiot. You say the camera guy played by Madhavan, that his mind was always somewhere else, but he was forced to do engineering.
yeah.
And once he got into camera, it made all the difference in his life. Yeah.
I think that's a very important question for all of us working in this field. Like for us, the fellowship is not just 1 year. Actually, once the fellows become Green Hub fellows, they are fellows with us forever. In that sense, that's our approach. And we work very hard with the alumni. Most of our work is a lot with the alumni now. So what we are trying to do is like we try and see what the fellows want to do, and I'm not saying we are successful all the time. It's not that, but the effort is that anybody who wants to do something, for example there's Surly Bond. She's from West Kabi Anglong. She walked into Green Up saying that, during an interview, she said that there's this mountain near my house. It's a small mountain. We call it the God Mountain. And now, there's quarrying happening. And it's very close to our community, but our community itself is doing that. So what do I do? And I want to save it. Now, that's just an indicator of her thinking. So, but now today, she was in our second batch. Now, after 3 years of graduating also, she's formed something she's consistently worked with the community with video as well as working on the ground. She's formed something called Youth for Nature Dongamukam. And there's a lovely set of youth there, and they're now trying to see how conservation and livelihood can be linked. Similarly, there are other fellows. So working very closely with them is important. It's not as if I think you have to always work as a collective. Nature is like that, right? Nature is not, a tree doesn't grow alone, or water or river is not flowing alone. It's all very symbiotic. So I think there's a constant learning from nature how you can use it for your own life. So I think that's our approach, where we don't we all are a support system for each other. The fellows are a big support for us. When we are trying to do something, they help us with taking that idea forward. Similarly, when a fellow wants to do something, everybody gets together to make that thing happen. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed. So I think it's that whole constantly working as a collective, being interdependent, not thinking that you can go ahead alone, but respect for interdependence, respect for each other, respect for each other's work. I think that's what our whole philosophy is. And that's what is making us go ahead. And we're constantly in touch with the alumni. I think that is our key thing. We are always in touch,
If I can just ask, the films that we have done, and I saw the list, are these films open for showing to the public, particularly I work with a lot of students and colleges. Are they open to show them, or is there restrictions on that, on
No,
public view?
in fact, all the Green Up films are available on our YouTube channel. It's called the Green Hub Video Diary. And all the films haven't been uploaded yet, but almost 80 films are already there. Anybody can use it from classrooms for any workshops if you want to screen it. All the films are for open use by anybody. And we'll be uploading more. It's because films take time I think we have more than 200 films or 300 films at Green Hub. Out of that, only 80 are uploaded yet. But yeah, it's available on Green Hub Video Diary. And if you want a higher resolution for any specific event, you can email us. We are on Facebook. You can message us on Facebook also, and we'll share the films with you.
The platform is open for the audience to ask questions from Rita. I mean, it's such an interesting journey. I'm quite sure that we'll have many questions. Audience, please. I still have a few questions, but I will keep it for the end. Yeah, Priyanshu.
Sir, I think we don't have questions for now.
Uh,
I have some questions. Sanjeev, sorry, Sanjay.
yeah,
Hi, Rita.
please
This
go
is
ahead.
Milind.
Hi, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to our platform. Um, uh, I'm so happy to hear what you said. And I think quite a lot of our goals are similar. As you know, Anaajoree is new. So we are figuring out where to go. And we also realize that maybe we will not start something new, but we would like to support existing organization and young leaders.
Yes.
So, and 5 areas are basically animal, gender, sexuality, environment, education, and health. And we also are working on entrepreneurship. So I was
Yes.
just thinking, as you're saying, that how could we collaborate? How could we support each other? Again, it's a very new organization. Previously, it was me doing alone for last 2 years, and this is the first time we are doing this team effort, and we have this Anaajoree team since July. And so one thing I was seeing, like for example, we'll take the animal. We are working with various animal rescue organization over here, and we are trying to bring them together. We are trying to identify who are the organization. For example, we are working with ECI and We Animal from Teshpur and Dibrugarh and Jorhat, and working with Nandini over here and Indirama and others. So we are bringing them together. And then what we realize that we will do some fundraising, for example. But for fundraising, specifically from abroad, and since I live 6 months over there, I want to reach out. And for that, we really need some quality videos where we can say a story. And
Yes.
unfortunately, the rescues are so busy, they're rescuing. They're not even having time to enter data. I am sitting and going through their Facebook and entering data right now.
Yeah.
So they're so busy. So I was just thinking that will it be possible in the future to collaborate? Maybe it will be videos that they already took, but your fellows use their magic hand and imagination and make it beautiful, make it edited and make it a beautiful story.
Yes.
Ca-
Absolutely. Mm.
Because when they're rescuing, they may not have, we may not be able to coordinate. We may try because there was a rescue yesterday at Nagaon. And some people from Tezpur came from UCI to help. But I do not know whether it will be possible to coordinate when we are rescuing. It would be great when it is happening. But if not, if the organization provide the videos and they compile so that we can tell a story,
Sure.
so that we can get grant for that. And similarly, apply for environment too. For example, we are working with Sanjay. Sanjay have been really working hard. His dream is to make Assam zero waste. And we want to support Sanjay to do that. So how can we work together? How can we make all these stories so that we can bring those stories outside?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely,
We can,
Milind. Our whole model is to partner with organizations. So we partner with, like, since our first year, we partnered with more than 50 organizations. And the idea is to make films on the work which is happening on the ground. And that's how the fellows learn. And in
Okay.
fact, with UCI, we work very closely in Tezpur. So UCI and Green Hub, we work a lot together on everything which is happening here. And
Great.
so we'll be happy to help in in creating these videos. And even with Sanjay, we can partner to actually document the work he's doing and create videos for for fundraising or anything. Absolutely.
That's great. Because,
thanks so much.
we are also working with many organizations, and quite often it will be story of some other organization. We will connect because we are generally connected. The other thing I wanted to ask is a personal question. Did you see our movie Fireflies? And what is
Yes,
your opinion?
I just loved Fireflies. In fact, we had Milan, you'll be happy to know one of our team members at Green Hub is Arpana Chaudhary, who runs
Yes, yes,
Hobdo.
yes.
And so when I was talking about working together in collaboration, so our whole definition of conservation is really like getting everybody together. So we work, Arpana has had many events in Green Up space. And only two, I think Fireflies, we screened it soon after it was released. And we had an audience, a small audience from Tezpur, and just loved the film. I think it was very strong, and the story was very well done, and also the acting. Just loved it. Really liked the film. So congratulations for that. You know.
Thank you, Rita.
Yeah.
Sanjay, back to you. I may have a few more questions, but Sanjay, back to you.
Now I just wanted to relate one of the photos that you put it on the Facebook and how impactful it was. Rita, he put the photo of the dog to be rescued, and he wanted to raise 10,000 for the surgery and the treatment for the dog, and it was done in less than a week. And that is the power of the social media and a good documentation. And this is why we truly think that we would, Anaajoree as a platform, would truly love to work with you, because as you said, the things are interconnected. So even I may be working in garbage, which may be less interest in, and I don't have the less interest in the sparrows or vultures, everything. It is, I do try to do work, but I'm focused on that. So we'll be very happy to actually screen some of your movies in my school, in the district that I'm currently work with, and soon I'll be in Guwahati. So probably one day when I meet you, I'll sit with you and probably select some of the movies that we can start with, and then gradually, because viewership is important, that everybody knows, and that it makes a huge difference.
Yes.
Anybody else on the participant list for questions, please? So if there is nobody, Milin, you can ask, and then I will ask my questions. We must finish this by 11 o'clock because Rita has to go for another one.
So, I didn't have a specific, but I wanted to know. So, have you? So, is the focus mainly on the green hub, meaning, on the conservation of the environment, or have you done anything on gender and sexuality and other stuff too?
So, Milind, our prime focus is definitely conservation. But like I mentioned, we partner with Northeast Network. So Northeast Network works with women and women's issues. So we don't look at conservation, wildlife, or environment in isolation. We look at it from the perspective of health. We look at it from the perspective of community well-being, largely. So our collaborations are also like that. You know, like I mentioned that we work with Khobdo. Similarly, we have a collaboration with Youth Wellness Hub, which is a part of the Regional Mental Health Institute in Tezpur. So Youth Wellness Hub and Green Hub collaborate together to do a lot of events together. So because our whole thing is, when you're talking about the environment, you're not just looking at the animal or the forest, but you're looking really at the well-being of the community. So yeah, so it does look at a larger landscape, but definitely conservation is our, what do you say, ecological security is our main foundation. You can say that.
So my question is that, so you have 20 fellows every year, or is it 20 fellows every year, right?
Yes, 20 fellows every year. Yeah.
So what are the success stories of these fellows? What they do after they complete? Because the reason why I'm asking is that eventually, because we want to also support entrepreneurs, we also wanted to be incubator. Okay. And
yes.
And when we are starting to work in Assam, and as you working deeper with organization, we realize that many organizations do not have structures. Okay, passionate people say that, okay, let's rescue animals, and they're rescuing animals, but the person dies, quite often the organization dies. Okay, because it's like an NGO khuli loise, NGO khuli loise, but that NGO is nobody owned the NGOs. That is a public entity that it has to run. I mean, quite often we do not know that. We think that NGO khuli loise means like a dukan khuli loise. So how do you we want to work, and right now we are working with some people from Six Sigma certified process expert, as well as some people from US. So we are working on creating structure. First, starting a structure for ourselves, for Anaajoree. And once we have this structure, we would like to help other organizations. The way Mantra for Change is doing in Bangalore for education part. So similarly, we want to do, this is one of the things that we want to do, that we want to support bringing structures or bringing or being an incubator for entrepreneurs, whether it's for profit or non-profit. So I was trying to think what is our connection could be, like what happened to these fellows after they complete, you know, do they do become an entrepreneur, or is there a way that we can work together to make them more successful entrepreneur? Because our goal also to have people from Assam to stay in Assam, not just have a brain drain, to move out. You know, how do we create that entrepreneurship, or you know? So I would like to hear your thoughts.
So, Milan, we have a process where we, through the fellowship, we kind of, it's a 1-year fellowship because we really want to get to know the fellows. It's not just about the training, but when you spend that 1 year together, you really get to know what their inclinations are, what are the areas they need to strengthen themselves, what are their interests, you know, and then the whole thing is that how do you guide them to take that interest forward? So it's a very, it's like goes beyond that 1 year. So what happens is sometimes some of the fellows who want to work with the communities, for example, there are further fellowships and grants which are there for community grassroots workers. For example, there's a grant called Mud on the Boots Fellowship for grassroots conservationists. So many of the Green Hub fellows from the first batch, four Green Hub fellows, which also included one person from the forest patrolling staff in Mizoram. It included 2 boys who work in a remote village in Fakim. It included Anoko, who works in rowing. 4 of them got the Mud on the Boots Fellowship to continue working with conservation on the ground. So small grants and fellowships beyond the fellowship is where a lot of people get in touch with us because they know we have a set of fellows who are working in conservation. So last year, for example, 2 of the fellows got the Wipro Sustainability Educator, got selected for that. So these are ways where they get a stipend or they get a salary to continue their work. And we kind of keep seeing how their work is progressing so we can keep connecting them to further this thing. And our own, through our Green Hub itself, what we've done is we have 2 learning sites. We have 2 pilot sites called the Forest Project sites, where it is being led by 2 of the fellows, and where we are trying to create a model of conservation, having learned from other places. You know, we are not reinventing the wheel, but we've learned from other spaces and creating them as learning centers. So for the fellows also, it becomes a further learning, other fellows who join us. So it's a combination of things. The main thing is that we are constantly connecting with the alumni to see where they're going. There's a constant role of mentorship. We have a huge set of resource people. It's not just me. Actually, I'm looking more at how the project is running, but we have a lovely set of resource people who are filmmakers, who are wildlife biologists, who are working practitioners. They themselves become mentors for the fellows to take the idea forward. So they're through fellowships. Many of them have got jobs with other NGOs as video documentation officers or as environment representatives in those areas. For example, there's Mordecai, who's from Taminglang in Manipur. And it's a very remote area, and Corbett Foundation wanted to work there. They interviewed Mordecai, they found him suitable. Now Mordecai is working in that area for the last 3 years. So as soon as you create a local pool of youth who have certain skills or have inclination for social change, it helps other organizations to link with them and take their work forward. So that is our main model, making the individuals into change makers and then connecting other things to each one, you know, things like that. So almost 90%, I would say, are engaged in some form or the other in social change, you know, even as freelancers.
And one last question, Sanjay, one sec.
please.
Rita, because we are coming across various youth, what are the basic qualities that you are looking for so that if we see a person, like, you know, we can say, yep, that person should apply for Green Hub. Would you please tell us the qualities you're looking for?
Okay. So Milan, the first thing is, it is for people who don't have the resources for this kind of training, because the training is quite intensive. It's really, you know, a good training in photography, video editing. We use good machines, everything. So one is for people who cannot afford this kind of thing. So preferably from the remotest areas where they don't have access to this kind of, so that is one criteria, and from indigenous communities, that being the key target group. But then there may be other people, even from small towns and urban centers, who are very committed in some way to work in the field of conservation, or who want to work in the field of social change, using any means. And obviously, if they're interested in video and photography, then that's an added bonus. But they don't need to. Like, we've had fellows who don't even know how to read or write, but are working in conservation very deeply. So that is a basic criteria, 18 years and above, because it's more the youth above 18. That's it. No other qualification. It's more the heart and the mind more than anything else,
Thank you, Rita.
Yeah.
That's what matters at the end of the day, how much passion you have to do something. And that's what takes people to the destiny they really wish to be. Rita, one final question.
Yeah.
Once a film is made, once a photography is done, how do you disseminate, and how do you engage with the community? This is what is happening in your community, and this is what you do. So what is the medium that you often use? And this I'm asking for purely from the learning point of view, which we all of us can apply. So how do you engage with the communities after you have done something as a video or photography?
So, Sanjay, we are using multiple ways. One is many times the fellows take these films back to their villages for community screening. And all the fellows, like I said, who are working with the forest project sites, use the Green Hub films with their community, not just the Green Hub films, to start the dialogue. Because film is a very good medium for people to engage. So right now also, for example, in Karbi Anglong, there's a boy called Joy Hind. He's one of the fellows. He's working very closely with the community. He's gone to a very remote area where there's no network right now. And he's doing all these, working with the children on right to education, as well as conservation and hunting and talking about all that. So he's taken a set of films. Now the advantage is you can show it on a laptop. You don't need the old time projectors and things like that. You also have small projectors which can be used, portable projectors. So one is the community screenings. So a lot of the fellows take these films back to the villages. Sometimes we also take it ourselves. Other thing is the YouTube, where all the films are accessible by anybody. Other thing is the NGOs who partner us use these films in their own way, in their own workshops. One of the things which we are trying to do is, for example, in Tezpur University with the Environment Science Department, every year I have a session of 3-4 days where I use the videos as the tool for teaching in the classroom about environment. So a film is a very interesting visual because it's not just what you see, but how you can push the students to look beyond what you see in a film. So we are also using it in classrooms. And now we are exploring how the videos, also our footage, can be made into different educational products for non-formal schools, academic institutes at any level. So in multiple ways we are trying to use the video. Yeah.
Interesting. With this, probably we come to the end of our sessions. Very rarely that we end up, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions to be answered. But we would just request you that we would love to remain connected with you and learn from what you have done and probably contribute to it, both Anaajoree as a platform and we as individuals and organizations. So thank you so much, Rita, for being with us. And thank you, everybody who is part of this this call today on this webinar. And we look forward to see you again. Thank you so much, Rita.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. And thank you, Milind. Thank you, Sanjay. And look forward to seeing you guys here at Green Hub. Okay.
Sure, I will be. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.